All right, well, hey, welcome back. So we're going to do another one of these series on writing a literature review. Okay, now as I said in the previous two videos, which you should probably take a look at first if you haven't seen those already, literature review really is the foundation of doing good research. It's really about getting to know the subject matter upon which you're writing, getting to know the field, what kind of work has been done, what hasn't been done, and this is how we end up providing a good foundation for our own research. In this way, we don't sort of redo what's already been done. We don't make mistakes whereby we fail to recognize the work of others. And we start off on a more informed footing in general. Okay, in this third video, we'll be talking about the evaluation of research. As we're sort of working through our literature search, how do we sort of evaluate the work that we're reviewing? How do we sort of discern the good from the not so good? So in this video, as it says over here, we'll be discussing the different types of research, again with an eye towards evaluating it, the goals of that research, and then based upon 1 and 2, how we really go about evaluating the quality of that research. Okay, to start off with, we should understand that there are different types of research, and these different types of research have different methods and different goals. Evaluating one type of research by the metrics of another is really not appropriate and isn't going to be helpful to either us or eventually our readers. So understanding what other researchers were trying to do with their work is important in our evaluation. So some of those types we see over here, well, really these are all the types: exploratory, descriptive, explanatory, critical, and historical. And so we'll go through each of those in turn. Okay, the first of these types of research, exploratory research, is really understanding for its own sake or to test the feasibility of additional work. So, this might be something that we're just doing this work just to learn more about a given topic. In terms of theory, I'm an economist, right? So this might be to try to advance theory a little bit, or if we're in one of the more applied natural sciences, this might be a theoretical question in physics. We're just trying to understand the nature of things. We might be doing an initial study to try to figure out whether a larger study is really feasible. So we may, test a small sample. It really isn't going to produce conclusive results, but will allow us to ascertain the feasibility of a larger, more serious study. And these types of studies are going to ask these questions: what, where, and how. Okay, the second of our types of research, descriptive research, is to better understand phenomenon either through observation or the evaluation of empirical evidence. Okay, so here, we're going to go out and we're going to see what's going on, and then we're going to write up and describe it. Okay, this is a very common way of doing research in social sciences, and in some of the natural sciences as well. In the social sciences, often a good way to sort of get a basic footing on some phenomena is to sort of go out and observe it, talk to people, interview them, bring that information back, and then you can do some sort of preliminary analysis on what you've observed. So in this case, our real questions are how and what. Okay, the third type of research is explanatory research. Okay, and this is research, sort of what we, if we were to ask people on the street and have an idea about research, sort of this lab coat sort of thing in a laboratory somewhere. This is explanatory research. This is to understand causal relationship between different variables, to suggest reasons why things are as they are. Okay, and our main method is going to be experimental design. Okay, in economics, of course, we do this type of research frequently. The statistics, of course, of causal relationships is not basic. It's not rudimentary. It's quite advanced. And so when we see explanatory research, or we're evaluating explanatory research, really thinking carefully about the method that's been applied to the experimental design becomes very important and critical. Okay, the next type of research over here, critical research, provides a critique of an existing argument, assumption, or practice. Okay. Now, in economics, we don't use a critical approach very often, but other fields in the social sciences as well as the humanities frequently use critical reasoning in their research. And what we're doing here is we're looking at the way, one example of this is we're looking at the way in which the sort of assumptions of how society works, or the things that we sort of all take for granted about how society works, and we're providing a critique of that, whether that produces the ends that we wish them to do or not, or whether they produce sort of dysfunctional results. So in this case, the analysis is going to go along sort of what, right, is the question, and then what is the negative impacts of, and the research takes on a rhetorical style. That is to say, it's going to make an argument for something, right? Either for an alternative approach to looking at things or doing things, or to offer a criticism of existing practices. Historical research. So what are the events that led to X, historical event X? What are the broader socio-political environment around which X occurs? Okay. Obviously, this is most notably present in history, but also in other humanities, as well as social sciences, and occasionally natural sciences as well. In economics, we're often interested in particularly the broader economic events that lead to certain economic conditions that bring about certain types of socioeconomic change. But certainly a valid form of research, but yet we can see one that's very different from, say, exploratory research, where we're trying to understand the causal relationship between two variables in a laboratory style setting. In historical analysis, we of course can never have sort of laboratory style settings. Okay, so then moving on to the evaluation of this research. As we're going through different types of research and sort of trying to think, whether this is something that is well done or maybe could use some work, right? We want to be looking at the different types of research, remembering what the goals are of that research, and then sort of asking ourselves these sort of series of questions. Yes, over there. So what is the purpose of this study? It should be clear, right? The author of the work should have made it clear to the reader, why we're doing this, right? What is the significance of this work? They should have made it clear what are the units of analysis, right? Are we talking about miles here? Are we talking about the good society? If we're talking about the good society, and sort of what units are we using to evaluate that? Do we have some kind of happiness index, or what might be something more abstract? What is the sampling strategy? Okay, so how have we chosen to gather our data from the existing population? What types of data were collected? So did we go out, is it clear in the paper? It should be clear. Did we go out and talk to people? Is this based upon individual or several narratives that we sort of heard, right? It doesn't mean that that's necessarily bad, right? I'm not implying that at all. Okay, but whatever the data collection method was, it should be clear in the paper. Okay, we might evaluate that in terms of, well, is the best that this could be done, right? In some cases, we have very, very good, very high quality data across a wide number of variables. It allows us to do, in the social sciences, it allows us to do experiments and experimental design that really comes really close to mimicking true laboratory conditions. And other times, there's no real hard data out there, and the best we can do is go talk to people and find out what's going on. And so as we're sort of analyzing this in terms of sampling strategy, what type of data is collected, how is the data managed, we want to ask ourselves, is this really the best that could be done in this situation? Okay. How is the validity of the data confirmed? Again, it may be the case that we were able to do excellent validation, right? It could be either through statistical techniques, it could be through corroboration of various narratives or stories from people interviewed or groups analyzed. Or it could be that we really couldn't corroborate it at all. But as long as that's mentioned, right? As long as it's mentioned and clear in the paper what's been done, we have some basis for a positive evaluation. Again, asking ourselves at each turn, is this the best that could be done? Okay. Breaking that down a little bit between qualitative and quantitative studies. In terms of qualitative studies, how credible is the information? If we have an ethnographic study, so we have, the author has gone out and talked to people, interviewed them, are those sources likely credible? Do they have a good basis, good base of knowledge to speak effectively on that subject matter? If we're working from data, how high quality is that data? Do we have some clear corroboration of the data? Have methods and aims been discussed? Right. So again, why are we doing this work? Why qualitative work can be very challenging and time-consuming. It can also be ethically challenging. You're dealing with real people in their lived environment, and so we should have good reasons for doing things. Has the data or information's been collected? Is it accessible for scrutiny? So again, if we're talking about like an ethnographic study, are the original tapes available? Doesn't necessarily mean that they're included in the paper, because that would be unreasonable, right? But if you were doing follow-up research, are you able to contact the author? Are those the base information, right? The base data of the study, is it available? Shifting over to quantitative studies, are all the variables clearly defined? Are they consistent, right? A lot of times when we're using quantitative data, the people who are measuring it in the first place, they weren't thinking about our study. They were thinking about, whatever reason they were collecting the data in the first place. The reasons for collecting data are many, but most commonly not having to do with academic research. So are those variables consistent over time? So if we're talking about a time series of data, do those variables mean the same thing over the entire time span? Okay, are they measurable, right? Are they well defined, right? Do we know what these variables are? Okay, is the sampling method sound, right? Is the population correctly defined? Or are there maybe challenges there that have not been recognized in the work? Finally, are the measurement instruments accurate, right? So the way in which we're measuring this thing, so in economics, it's most commonly through regression analysis. Is the design of the regression, is it sound, right? Is it correctly specified? Are all the assumptions behind the model that's been employed reasonable for the work in question? If there's challenges that remain, has the author made note of those? I think sometimes we think that sort of research has to be sort of pure in the sense that it's 100% correct in its findings all the time. But of course, that's not how science works. How science works is we control as best we can. We use the very best instruments possible, and we make note of all of our methods as well as all of the shortcomings that we believe exist in our work. Okay. Finally, then, of course, how credible are the findings? If the above have been addressed rather fully, that is to say, if the sampling is sound, data collection at either the quantitative or qualitative is sound, methodology is well thought out and documented, the rationale for the work has been well considered and also well documented, the base data is available, that is whatever the experiment is or the work is in some senses repeatable. If all these are sort of in place, then the findings are going to be relatively credible. If one or more of these is absent, then the findings of the work are suspect, right? And it may be that the authors really couldn't do a better job. Again, I've said that a few times in this presentation, and we should understand that that's often the case, particularly in the social sciences, where sort of genuine laboratory conditions are basically impossible to do, and so we're always attempting to approach that, right? And of course, some studies are better than others for a variety of reasons. Sometimes it's just due to conditions, right, that exist in the world. Okay, well, that's it for this time. Again, we're going to keep trying to keep these relatively short. I hope you found this informative, and we'll see you again soon. Thanks. Take care. Bye.